Welcome to my economics channel, where I love discussing the subject, but most importantly, I love to make something fun and interesting to learn. And to that end, we have the question, how does understanding balance sheets help us understand growth? A corollary question to this is, what is the difference between finance and the real economy? And in the process of understanding what balance sheets are and what they can and can't do, we can ask ourselves the following questions. Does spending more increase growth? For example, every year, or at least up until last year, that is, around Christmas, spending goes way up, and GDP also goes up. Does the spending increasing also lead causally and as a correlation lead to GDP increasing at the same time? Because typically those seem to go up around the time of Christmas. And the second question is, why do we care? Why does this matter? We're going to have your balance sheet over here, and we just have, for the sake of this example, we have the other person in the economy, and we have his or her balance sheet. We have assets, we have liabilities, assets, liabilities. Nothing changes there. So everything that you own, including your house, everything you purchase goes on this side. All your liabilities, all your debts go on this side. It's actually interesting as a side note that equity is typically stored on the liability side of a balance sheet. And that the reason for that is that if we just draw another quick balance sheet here, if this is you and this is your business, any money that you put into the business, the starting capital, the starting money, whatever it is, goes on this side of the balance sheet as equity. The reason for that is that should the business dissolve, technically from the standpoint of the business or the standpoint of the balance sheet of the business, this is owed to you. This is a debt of the business that goes over to you. So technically your equity would be here, and on the corresponding side we'd have the business would be there. But that's as a side. Let's say you create an asset, and let's say that asset, and this is a timely topic, is a car. At the moment, that car is on your left-hand side of your balance sheet, and that's all it is. And let's say somehow it's worth 40,000. Now, other person wants to buy the car from you. So, this is its value. So, what happens is, and we'll say the other person just has $40,000. So what we do then is we minus $40,000 and we add $40,000 here, and of course we minus the car and go plus car. And so from a balance sheet perspective, we've minused the money. You're now $40,000 richer. You've now lost your car. You've lost your car and you transferred it to the other person. The important thing is, of course, you both gained. I mean, ideally the other person wants the car more than they want the money, and you want the money more than you want the car, and everyone's gained. But the important thing is in the macro perspective. This financial transaction, this exchange of money, didn't actually cause people to be better off, financially speaking, in the macro perspective, in the macro economy. Because all that's happened is we've had an exchange. We've had, a plus, minus, and then I guess, minus and a plus in that order. The important thing to note is that balance sheets typically just show us financial transactions. And financial transactions have a plus and they have a corresponding minus because all of this has to balance out. And this is where it trips people up. Often you'll see, people have the understanding that, I don't know, for example, it used to be Bill Gates at one point. And, for Bill Gates' wealth to increase, someone else's wealth, or a group of people more likely, their wealth had to decrease. A bunch of people, their wealth, if his wealth went up by, I don't know, 1 billion, he somehow, everyone else's had to go plus 1 billion minus 1 billion. Everyone else had to go down by minus 1 billion in order to facilitate the plus billion. And in this instance, it almost seems to, pay that off. It seems to bear that out because the only way you could get $40,000 was by someone else losing $40,000. And so it's actually worth delving into this point. How do you get richer? We might say you just acquire more assets. And so we have a car, we have a house, we might have appliances, and then we might say something like, I don't know, computer, something to that effect. All this stuff makes you wealthier, makes you happier, presumably. And of course, all of this stuff had to come from somewhere. And so the other person would then have minus car. Let's say this person sold it all to you. Of course, this person had to lose all of that, and you could gain it. And so it then seems to be that the economy is zero sum. Your gain is someone else's loss. But what the balance sheet doesn't show is the fact that the car, the house, the appliances, the computer had to come from somewhere. And the point is that comes from production. So all of these transfers, and the other person we can replace them with a business if we want to be more formal about it, but production came first. So GDP and wealth increased when the production of these first happened. That is when everyone is better off. You can think of these as just a plus for the economy. It's something new that we could not experience before those things were created. Whereas balance sheets and finance comes into play when we need to transfer ownership. That is a financial transaction, and that has your plus, that has your minuses, and that is the essence of a balance sheet. And so now we want to ask and answer one of the questions. Do we get richer at Christmas? Does increasing spending lead to higher GDP? Does that equal GDP increasing? And the answer is no. What's happening around Christmas is that production is increasing to account for the fact that there's going to be more people spending. So that goes up first, and this then allows increased spending. And so we get to the final question on this new slide. Why do we care? Why does all of this matter? So the first thing is you can't mandate growth. It's not just about increasing spending. There has to actually be something to buy. And of course we care about prices. If you just increase spending, but the amount of things and the economy doesn't increase as well, the aggregate supply, well then you're not going to increase wealth. And you might be saying that might be happening now with all the stimulus that's happening, particularly in the US. You might say that might just lead to inflation rather than growth. And this is also where dictators cannot mandate growth. As much as they might want things to just happen in the economy, or they want the numbers to look better, they simply cannot do it. There's much more to the story than simply increasing spending, because anyone can do that. You can increase deficit spending, you can borrow more money, what have you, especially in the era of fiat currencies. Aggregate demand matters. Once again, you can, as a dictator, you can increase your spending, go to deficit spending and all of that. But if the amount of stuff in the economy increases, we do actually have our plus production, but people don't buy that production, or there's a mismatch in the market, or some other really bad thing. Like in my example, is the dictator. Production can increase, but if we don't have aggregate demand to go along with it, it doesn't matter all that much. Then we also have credit matters, and this will be the final example that I'll get into with balance sheets, but I just put that in there for now. So finance matters, and once again we have to say mostly, but we have to be careful. Yes, finance matters because we have to show ownership. We have to show what it means to exchange ownership. We have to show what happens when you buy and sell something. But we can't let finance overtake the economy. And of course, aggregate demand is part of finance. This has to follow afterward. Assuming this part is healthy, if this is healthy, then yes, we're going to get a growing economy. And this is where we can get more things in the economy, whatever those things are. We get more of those, and then finance sorts out what happens with those after, with the ownership that happens after. But for the final example, let's talk about why credit matters. using once again our example of balance sheets. Once again, you invent the car, and you'll note that this car, the production, everything that went into that car, that's something new for the economy. So in the aggregate, everyone is better off. Okay, so that's happened. Now this other person, and once again we'll say $40,000, just for the sake of a simple, nice round number. This other person doesn't actually have $40,000 in this example. What's going to happen is he's instead going to advance credit. And so how does he do that? So the other person first will minus $40,000, and you will minus the car, and he'll get plus car. But then of course we have a mismatch. We have minus 40,000 here. You know, the two cars, they can effectively cancel themselves out now. This is a financial transaction. We have a minus, we have a plus, but we have another minus here. Where does this go? Well, this goes here. And you could record this as a loan. So you could extend a loan to him. And a loan would go essentially like this. And so from your perspective, the loan, the $40,000, you record it on your balance sheet even though you haven't actually received the money. This has been created essentially out of thin air by an agreement. So we can say there's an agreement in the middle, and literally an agreement between the two of you. This loan will be extinguished. It's something temporary to show this $40,000 that's actually showing up on your balance sheet already, even though once again you haven't received it. And you might say something like, instead of loan being on the side, you might say repayment. You might once again repayments. And so once again, everything sums out to zero, as a balance sheet should. And then when the loan is paid back, the repayments, the loan, repayments, the $40,000, remember, you already have. It's just the loan now that's getting extinguished. The useful thing about this $40,000 as part of this loan, as part of this agreement being on your balance sheet, is that you can spend that $40,000 somewhere else. We can imagine there's more balance sheets. We'll get rid of space down here. So we have a bunch of balance sheets, and we'll just say this is you, and this is person 1, person 2, person 3. So you've received that plus $40,000, and you know this 10,000 you could spend 10,000 here, maybe 20,000 here, and then that leaves you another 10,000 here, and then we can minus 40,000. And once again, these people, they have not seen the money yet. The repayments haven't come through. You could spend this $40,000 on day 1, and it could be, let's say, day 30 days that the person pays you, and you can still use that as money. You can still make transactions even though that person has not paid you back yet. And as this person pays you back, or for the sake of our simple example, as they pay you back in one lump sum, all of this, it's a chain reaction. All of this gets to be paid off as well. And it's not that when the repayment comes in, you're better off. All that's happened is that the loan itself gets extinguished. You still have that $40,000. It's not that another $40,000 appears when the person pays you back. That's already happened. It's in effect, if you will, it's already been factored into your happiness. So yeah, $40,000 doesn't appear again. It already has appeared. You can use this money right now, and then over the course of the repayments, the loan will be extinguished, and all of this will be extinguished down the line. Hopefully that was useful. Hopefully that was helpful to understanding the difference. Go back to layer 1. The difference between financial and real growth. Does spending lead to more growth? No, it does not. It happens the other way around. Why do we care? Well, the reason for my video, that we care about GDP. We care about production of both goods and services first, and then finance sorts out what we do with everything else afterward. So, if you have any questions, do not hesitate to ask below, and I'll do my best to answer. Or at the very least, I will collect the questions or question, and I'll put it into another video, and I'll do my best to answer it there. And if you found this useful, don't forget to subscribe, because that helps my channel tremendously. It helps me grow, but also helps you know when I upload new videos. Otherwise, I hope you've enjoyed this. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you guys in the next video.